All right.
Maybe it's a hot day and they start to stay in the apartment in the afternoon.
Right. There you go. That's right. Could be. It's already that's already warm season. All right. So good morning and Chodesh Tov to everyone. We're going to learn a little bit now to complete Siman Reish Ayin Beis and Reish Ayin Gimel. Sorry, Reish Ayin Beis. We won't. I think what we won't do today is we probably will not start Reish Ayin Gimel. We'll finish and complete the Siman, and then when we do it, we'll probably stop right then and there. Um, so last week we had discussed. We discussed a lot about making kiddush using whiskey or other such alcoholic beverages, and whether this is permissible to do, or is it lechatchila b'diavad? And we saw that whether it was the Mishnah Berurah. We're going to finish the comments of the Mishnah Berurah on that topic a little bit today. There was the Mishnah Berurah, the Aruch HaShulchan. There was an acknowledgement that there were Gedolim who did this, who made Kiddush on Shabbos morning using alcoholic beverages that were not named wine. And, okay. Look, if you don't have wine, we saw even the Shulchan Aruch Paskin, you can use other beverages. So, of course, by the letter of the law, it's permissible. The question is, if you have wine available, it does appear that the answer is then you should be making it on wine. From the language of the Shulchan Aruch on down, there seems to be this acknowledgement. But for various reasons over the years, times when wine was not so readily available, that the price of wine was very expensive, so Sheikhar became more utilized. Chamar Medina became more utilized. So that is what it is. I wanted to just talk about one last topic within that, which is when people, sometimes I'll see here the Ashkam does the kiddush with alcohol. The question is, what size is the kiddush? And we talked about the just to review, the Mishnah Berurah had said last week, if you're going to use Sheikh or Chamar Medina, you have to be machzik a revius when you hold it, which is more than a shot glass. By the way, my brother, give him a little shout out here, corrected me that the typical shot glasses here, he knows what me about this topic, in the United States are 1.5 ounces. Maybe these ones are 1. But a typical shot glass, like the glass ones he's talking about, I should clarify with him, but there's 1.5. But that might be how much you have to drink. But you probably need to about double that in order to make the kiddush, according to the Mishnah Berurah. So why is it that not just here, sometimes you'll see people doing it, but other places, they seem to have less than the amount. They'll use the 1.5, whatever it is. So they are basing themselves, those who do this practice are basing themselves in a Taz that I wanted to pull up for you, where, let's see, sorry, I'm just going to find this Taz. There, the discussion is about Bracha Acharona. Oh, there's a Safari app, sorry. Okay, and Halacha. And here we need the Taz. Good morning, Shlomo. Here we are. Siman. It's the Siman Reish Yud, which we did many moons ago at this point. And let's see if we can find the Taz on this. Commentary. Okay, right. Okay, so here we are. Turei Zahav. So the Taz writes, this is, again, the topic there is Ha'ochel Pachos Mikezayis Madino. If you eat less than the olive's worth, or when it comes to drinking, let's say you drink less than a malolugmav, right? The cheekful. What do you do? So in the Shulchan Aruch, just to give you context over there, he says, "Ochel pachos mikazayis bei mipas bei mishar ochlin, or v'hashos pachos merevius. If you drink less than a revius, bein min hayayin, bein mishar mashkim, mevarach tchila bracha haruya lo so hamin ula'achrav ein mevarach klal." They say that there's no bracha achrona if you drink less than a revius. So on this, the Taz comments, nearly The Yain Sraf Shiba Medina Seinu Eino Bichlalze. He says that the whiskey in our country is not within this rule. That the rule doesn't hold. The bazeh efshar lishtos revius halug shu beitza umechza. You crazy? You're gonna drink a revius of the stuff that we make? That's like equal to the equivalent of an egg and a half. So here, when it comes to such a drink, you would go by what the normal person would drink of this type of drink, and then be satiated and be done with it.
I was going to ask you that question.
Right. So, so this is what the Taz says. V'im kein sorry. Shir shasiel rovid adam bazeh. V'raya lezeh. He brings the proof. V'yu beis Yosef le'inyan Biria. Deyesh chiluk di'im hu derech davar shederech le'ochlo im hagarin. If it's something that you would normally eat with the seed in the pit in the middle, chashvin on im hagarin kazayis. So then, if you start to add, well, you add the with this and the pit, it equals the kazayis. He says, "Hachanami nezul basar derech haolam." So it depends. Do you eat the pit? Do you not eat the pit? Do we consider the kazayis with the pit or not? Like, depends on what do people do. Do you eat or not eat the pit? So he says, there at least is an opinion that says this. So he says, "Hachanami nezul basar derech haolam." So this shows you, like, so by this question, we should also go, do people do, what do normal people do with this kind of situation? And then he brings Vesur Raya Miresh Perak Hamotz Yayin, the Amrinan Sham Yayin Kedei Miziga, that the wine you measure it, in its state of being diluted. Mefarshin Kedei Rova Revius. I think it means like a quarter of a revius. Sheim timizagenu yamod al revius. V'hu shir kos shel bracha. And then that counts as a shir kos shel bracha. So what does this show you? Again, that it depends on how people, the fiyamazika, how much they diluted in this particular place or whatnot. So here so at the end he concludes, the Taz concludes and says that, where is this? Like this. So therefore, this is for the wine, though. So this is for a case of wine, right? Roy limzog mayim v'yishte revius. V'efshar lishtos revius l'stam adam karina, l'stam adam. So karina bei shapir v'savata, because it all comes down to how do you define v'savata for a person. So he says for a person to drink this amount of, I don't know. I see plenty of people at Kiddush are drinking, based on mechza, whatever it is. But supposedly for them this is very strong. So he says that this is called the savata. That this little bit for whiskey is the savata. I've satiated, and therefore, because that's the idea is that the kazayas or revius is the minimum amount of, like, I feel some level of satiation from it. But when it comes to whiskey, that amount is even less that I need to consume. And therefore, even with a shot of whiskey, it would appear that you are required, according to the Taz, to make a bracha acharona. And he doesn't mention anything here about a kiddush, though. But this is the source that people use to say that if I have a chiv to make a bracha acharona on the whiskey, that's 1 ounce, 1.5 ounces. So I should be able to then make kiddush by the same logic, because if this counts as a revius, for the stam b'nei adam, l'inyan bracha acharona, it should count as a revius l'inyan kiddush for the stam b'nei adam. This is the opinion. Again, the Mishnah Berurah doesn't hold this way. Aruch HaShulchan didn't really weigh in this question about how much you have to put if you're using sheikhar. I would venture to say he probably agrees with the Mishnah Berurah, but I'm not going to put words in his mouth. But this is what those who are relying on the little shot glass are relying on this Taz, which is talking about the halacha of Baracha Achrona. But that's the source that is quoted for those who hold this practice. All right, now I think we thoroughly explored the topic of alcohol at Kiddush or Shabbos morning. Let's now go back into the Mishnah Berurah. Last week we did the Lamed at the very end. So we're up to Lamed Aleph in the Mishnah Berurah. There he is commenting on the notion that in the morning, if you don't have wine, you should use sheikhar. Better to use sheikhar than to use bread, because that way you'll make a shahakol before the hamotzi. Because if you just make a bracha on the bread, there's no shinui. There's nothing different about how you started this meal. You start any meal that you have bread with hamotzi lechem min haaretz, and sorry, and thank you. I'm good though. Good try. Okay. So anyway, so this is where we are. Lamed Aleph shahakol. But don't drink it, please. Okay. Thank you. Uvezoha bracha shehu mosif kodem haseuda hu heker shehu l'chvod haShabbos. As I was just saying a moment ago, by making this bracha of shahakol, you're adding something before the meal as a sign, as a placeholder that's like, this is not your regular meal, and therefore we're adding honor towards Shabbos by saying, look, this is a special meal. So I'm having a little drink before it, even though it's not the wine that we were hoping to use. I don't have wine available. Okay, so at least I have something to show that there's something different about today. If you make a bracha on the bread, there is no differentiation between today's lunch and tomorrow's lunch.
If you remain on the bread, would you say
Probably you should. Yeah, probably you should. Whatever you would normally do, you should do. Now it's interesting here. So it's interesting. Like you're saying, well, come on, there is something different here. People say, Vishamru, Zachor, Samashavas Lakacho, Alkei Berach. I would love a little history lesson here on when all those were added in, because it's clear that the Gemara times nobody said anything beforehand, and nobody here seems to mention anything. And we'll get to the topic of Shabbos morning Kiddush again. I think as we, when we get to, because we're still in the nighttime, in the Seder of Shabbos, but
what Bert Villa was reading after the.
Well, I think that certain things were added. It's not even tefillah. Certain things were added. I think that the reason that, Steve, those things were added were to add certain chashivos to the Kiddush, because it's otherwise really at its core it's just saying Borei Pri Hagafen. All the other stuff you don't say it. There's nothing lost in that sense. Here, I think it comes up again. Yeah.
Really important. Because it just says.
Yeah. Shaharei baboker ain't omrim nusach haKiddush, right? There is no nusach haKiddush for. As I was saying, things I think were added later on. I just don't know when, like in the times of the Mishnah Berurah, they weren't saying, Alkain and Vishamru, etc. And the answer is maybe they weren't. By the way, I would imagine that they were though, because
But Rabbi,
I think he's trying to say there's no formal nusach. When it comes to, I guess maybe Steve, this is what I would say is that when it comes to Friday night, there's a formal nusach, right? There's a bracha, Mekadosh Shabbos, and the whole thing is a formality. Even though yes, he'll say Vayachlu is not technically a part of the Kiddush, and maybe it's not, but at least you have something. Here you have nothing formal to hang your hat on, right? There's no like formal bracha, something that differentiates. I think the other things were added in because dafka of this reason.
But Rabbi,
Yeah.
you mentioned before that if you start with bread,
Yeah,
it's like any other day.
yeah,
However, at the time of the Gemara, especially in those days,
yeah,
they had usually wine or beer because of the water situation.
yeah.
So every day, every meal, they did have the
Right.
So then, where's the differentiation?
So I actually think
They didn't have anything extra to say.
it comes with I think it comes with starting the meal on wine is the differentiation. That's not the norm. You would normally start by making, by washing and making hamotzi. That's why we even cover the challah. Right. So the differentiation is that we start by doing something a little bit different. Um, uh, by sanctifying this meal with wine at the beginning of it, and that elevates it in a spiritual sense. I was just even looking ahead at Reish Peites, where he talks about, that Yiyeh Shulchano Aruch Umuta Mutzas Yafeh. The table should be beautifully set, and they used to have like mattresses to sit on. They should be set beautifully. Mapa Perusa Kama Besudas Halayla, and it should be like the night before, Friday night meal. There should be a nice tablecloth. V'yivarech al hayayin bar pegafen. And he goes right into it, and you say bar pegafen. He doesn't mention anything about any extras. V'hu nikra kiddusha rabbah. That's why in the Gemara the nickname for Kiddush on Shabbos morning is the Great Kiddush, because it's trying to give chashivus to something that's just very, very not so great in that sense. And then he says, "Go right away, v'achakach yitol yadav," and you wash your hands. Yeah. And then he talks again about that when there's no wine, you should use sheikhar. So, anyways, we'll review that topic when we get there. But yes, go ahead.
He's saying, right, that in the case where there's no wine, it's better to make the shahako before Kiddush, meaning I'm just explaining, right? And he's saying because otherwise you would not be able to have you would not be recognizing that it is Shabbat. So by doing the shahako, you're doing something that is
correct. Yeah.
I remember that he would not say anything for Kiddush because it would be the same thing. It's not. At least you would be recognized. Yeah. You would do something.
Right. And I think by Nusach HaKiddush here, I do think he's like talking about like the formal like bracha. But I don't know. I wish that maybe there is some sefer out there that talks about the hanhagos of the Chavetz Chaim when on Friday night, what did he do for Kiddush and things like that. Do you have anything in there, by the way? Any like interesting? Yeah. There's nothing there. So I don't know. I'll try to ask someone who ask my Rebbe about where did the other editions, if he knows where the other editions, when did they come along? When did people start saying im tashimi Shabbat raglecha? I don't know if it's psukim from Yishaya.
I thought they didn't change them at the
Nothing was changed here. I think things were the only sort of matbeya piece of this is that there's Bar Pir Gafen. Other things are just psukim from Tanakh, from Yeshayahu. Then there's from Torah.
But I didn't know that they added things as
yeah, but it's not really. I wouldn't call it tefillah here. It's like they're people who wanted to say some psukim before they, just I'm saying psukim from the Torah, before Kiddush because I want to make it more special. It doesn't, but it's not part of the Kiddush. If you're in a big rush. And you just had Bar Paragraph, and you fulfilled the mitzvah of Kiddush on Shabbos morning. Yeah. Okay, let's take a look at Lamed Beis. Right, this is the Mishnah. The Ramah had commented, "Im yayin ba'ir lo yikadesh al hapas." He says, if there's wine in the city, don't make Kiddush over bread. Right, even on Friday night when that's preferred over the alcohol. But if there's wine, then don't get involved with the bread. Why not? This is in order to satisfy the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam, who says you can never make Kiddush on bread, no matter what, not even as a backup option. Rabbeinu Tam doesn't think that this could work. So let's keep going. The Yeter HaPoskim, now even according to the Rosh and the other Poskim, who hold like the Rosh, which is to say that you could make Kiddush on bread, the Mutter Lekadesh al Hapas, Gam Kein Moded V'Mkom Sheyesh Yain Ba'ir, Ein Mekadshin al Hapas. Even they will all agree that if you're in a place where there is wine in the city, don't make Kiddush on bread. The ikar mitzvah hu al yayin, because the essential way of doing this mitzvah, the most, the fundamental way of doing this mitzvah is using wine, because it gladdens the heart. There are other explanations here, but like wine is an elevator for seen as an elevator for spirituality across the board, right? In every realm. Whether it's at a wedding, it's at a bris, it's at kiddush, it's, think about we're coming up to Pesach, 4 cups of wine. It enhances the mitzvahs that we do. Now, however, dilidid who im hapas chaviv lo yoser miyain. If for him, a particular person, they happen to love the bread much more than the wine. As mutar lekadesh ala pas afilu yesh lo yain. Then technically it's permissible to make the kiddush on the bread, even though there is wine available. And this is also what the Derech HaChaim paskins. Now this is a fascinating historical statement that people were, and again, maybe the wine wasn't so available. We've seen, right, that they had the raisin wine, and you heard that the Aruch HaShulchan's comment, the raisin wine. Right? They didn't like the raisin wine. They didn't want the raisin wine. So it could be that there were many people who also maybe didn't have the patience to make the raisin wine, right? This is, it's not like today, where you go to the store always. Many things weren't so available, and it does seem to be interesting. He says this perhaps is possibly why you can explain why the world is, relies on this to be, this leniency. It's really interesting. Obviously, there are many people who use bread to make the kiddush.
But some hold that you're not allowed to even say kiddush on pot as opposed to wine.
Yeah, Rabbeinu Tam.
He goes from there into saying, even if you have it, if you like it, you can say.
Yeah.
You can say kiddush on that.
Correct.
It's a big departure.
That's not everyone is going to hold like that. That some people, again, there are some few. Derech HaChaim quotes here. And this is mentioned, as a position, which is that if you like the pas more than the wine, you can make kiddush. Not everyone agrees with that, I'm not sure that you can't find a wine that you don't like that's better than your experience of eating the challah. I know there are delicious challahs out there, of course, but look, I think that the minhag ha'olam has swung in a direction where people wouldn't be like passing over a bottle of wine to go straight into making kiddush over bread. And again, halachically, it checks all the boxes. Put it that way, because Rabbeinu Tam does not permit kiddush over challah.
But this is all Rabbana. This is not the rice.
Yes, the usage of wine, the mitzvah of kiddush is the rice on Friday night, but the usage of wine is a rabbinic enhancement of the mitzvah. Right. You're absolutely correct about that. Okay.
But it seems like they
yes.
say that there's something special about emphasizing something Shabbos that is unique, right? Like something that is a little bit different, and I guess that's why it is better to not do bread during the day. Meaning it's not just
yes.
It's just there's something nice about it. Something for Shabbat.
Yes. So that's why he says that for Shai in the morning, don't use the challah because vidafka there's no right. Exactly. That's correct. Correct. Even scotch is better. Whiskey, scotch, all these things are better than going straight for the challah. Yes. All right, so let's go back upstairs into the Ramah in order to understand the next part here that we're going to do. In my edition is the bottom line of the Ramah of the top part, in the middle of the line after lo yikadesh alapas. It says there, the Ramah writes, "Umisha eno shose yayin mishum neder." And if let's say a person doesn't drink wine because they took a vow not to drink wine, okay. Whatever reason they said, they took a neder that they're never going to have hana from wine, so they're not going to drink wine. So yochol lekalesh alav yishtu acherem hamesubim imo. So it is possible to make kiddush on wine. And what do you do though? But I can't drink wine. I made a neder. If I make a neder, it's like to drink the wine is like an issur d'oraisa. It's a biblical violation for me. So what do I do? So I make the kiddush and then I give the other people to drink. And we already mentioned that this isn't the lichatchila, by the way. Usually we want you to drink from the kiddush wine if you're going to make kiddush. And I'm saying you should distribute to others as well. That's even a mitzvah and a mufchar for others to drink from the kiddush wine. But for you not to drink and to give to others, technically is fine by the letter of the law. but we don't love it. So, okay, bear that in mind. But okay, you made a neder. So what choice do we have here? Okay. But what if there are no people there? I'm alone on a Friday night. I made it, and I have already taken a vow that I will never drink wine. The vow is not, you can't just willy-nilly say, well, I wash my hands of the vow. There's a whole procedure for that. And if I'm by myself, I can't do Ataras Nadarim. So, and it's also Shabbos. That's one of the last simanim we're going to get to on Hilchot Shabbos. Can you do Ataras Nadarim on Shabbos? Okay, that's by the way, this is the very end of Hilchot Shabbos. Talks about, if I remember correctly, I think it's the second to last sim, if I'm not mistaken. The last one is about what if you're in the desert and you lose track of time, and you don't know what day is Shabbos. You have to celebrate Shabbos every day. It's fascinating simon. But no, it's not the last second. It's the second to last one or something like that. Towards the end it talks about Nidarim. I don't remember exactly which one. I thought it was Shid Mouth. Anyways, so what are you gonna do? So he says here, Yikadesh al hapas, if you're by yourself, make the kiddush on bread, below ala yain, and not on the wine. Oh, yishma kiddush me'acherim, or go hear kiddush from other people, which means he's telling you, go knock on your neighbor's door and go hear kiddush somewhere else. You got to make kiddush. You got to hear kiddush from somewhere else. So let's take a look now at the Mishnah Berurah in Lamed Gimel and Lamed Dalet. Lamed Gimel, he writes, Yachol lekadesh alav v'chulei, that you can go ahead and make kiddush even though you made a neder. Uvamagen Avram hichriya de asr lebazeh lekadesh almanas sheyishtu achem. He says, the Magen says, no. You can't make kiddush. It's not permissible to make kiddush on condition that I'm going to give others to drink. Kevan shehem yodim levarech be'atzman borei pregafen. They know how to make borei pregafen themselves. They know how to make kiddush themselves. As we'll see in the next kind, the coming siman sif dalet. Ella hey mikachu ba'atzman v'hu yikadesh alapas. Rather, they should all make kiddush for themselves, and he should make kiddush over the bread. Not that he should make kiddush and start giving others to drink. Now, sif dalet in the next siman. I'm just giving you a preview. He says, "Yachol adam lakadesh la'acherim afal pisha ena ochel iman." That a person can't make kiddush for others, even though he won't be eating with them. Who have him makom seuda? Because for them it's makom seuda, right? And even though usually when you make a bar per gafen, you can't be motzi other people if I'm not going to drink something right here. Kevin the behind bar per gafen who chover le kiddush is that bar per gafen is wrapped up in the midst of kiddush. Kiddush hayom davi, we treat that bar per gafen like a in terms of its brachas, that it's like as if it were kiddush. The yochol lahotzim afal pisha enonen. But he does say who she'enam yodim. That's when the other people don't know to make kiddush. Okay, so that's another point. But that's only when they don't know to make kiddush. What are you gonna do? You're gonna make kiddush, and they know. But okay, maybe you guys get lucky. You'll end up with somebody at the table who doesn't know how to make kiddush. Then you could probably do this. But if all the people there know how to make a borei pri hagafen by themselves, you can't really be making kiddush for them. In the situation where you've made a neder, and now you're stuck. Okay. Lamed Daled. Oh, Yishma Kiddush me'acherim, or you should hear Kiddush from others. Rose Salomar. What's he mean by this? Because you're here in the case you're by yourself. What does it mean? But there are no other people. What do you mean? I should go find other people? He says, Rose Salomar Yelech Eitzel Misurim Acherim. If you're by yourself, better than making Kiddush perhaps even better than making Kiddush on bread is go and find someone to eat with, and Shemikachin Latzman. They're going to make Kiddush for themselves, and you'll be Yotzei through their Kiddush. Okay, that's a suggestion of how to get around this. By the way, this is machlokas that this two different approaches come from the Hagos Maimoni. You see in the parentheses back up on top.
Do you have Lamed Dalet on this set?
On this, it should be on the back. Did I not make a copy at that? Yeah, it's on this page. See?
Which page is that?
Right here, 102. See it? Right over here.
Oh, okay.
You got it? Okay, yeah, good.
Yeah.
If you make a neder on wine,
Yeah.
that's what I've got.
So probably for Shabbos morning, that would be here he's talking about the Friday night. But for sure, if you've taken a neder against wine, then again, if someone else is making kiddush and you're being yotzei through them, and also fine. But it would be like ein yayin matzli ba'ir for be like there's no wine, so then you should make kiddush on Scotch whiskey or all those things for Shabbos morning if you took a neder. Now, just to point out, so the Hagoras Maimoni in Perek Chavtes says the Mechazer Achar Yayin says you should search for wine, meaning you should make kiddush on wine. And the Chuvas Maimoni, is Sofa Flaw of Simon Daled says you should make kiddush on bread. So what's the we call the nafkamina between these two positions? The situation where there's going to be a differentiation here is if I eat with other people, so let them make kiddush and I'll be yotzei through them. Like, that's not a problem. So they'll agree, but if I'm making kiddush by myself, the question is, do I search for wine and, try to, find a kiddush, or do I make kiddush on bread? This is where the big question is going to come. All right, now let's take a look at Sif Yud. Last Sif here in this siman. And when we finish this, we'll stop for today. So Sif Yud begins by saying, Birkas yayin shel kiddush poteres yayin shebesochas seuda. That the bracha on the wine that you make during kiddush exempts you from having to make a further bracha on wine that you drink during the meal. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah now. Poteres lamed hey. Since you're making this kiddush in the place where you're eating the meal, this is for the needs of the meal, and it is coming, right? And because of the meal, this is coming, meaning that the wine you're drinking at the beginning is a part of the meal. You can't view the kiddush as something separate. And in my extra comments here, they have, this is number 30, Tommy. That this whole calculation of that the bracha you make at the beginning counts for the bracha for the wine in the middle. This will only work when you normally have wine in the middle of the meal. But if you live in a place where people don't drink wine during a meal at all, or it's not even a havamina, not even a thought to drink wine during a meal, so then you probably do need to make another bracha in the middle of the meal because it will be an abnormal addition into your meal. This is not our situation. I feel very strongly that people do, whether they do or they don't drink wine during a meal on a normal basis, it is not uncommon that wine is consumed during a meal, even if wine is not consumed during many meals, even some Shabbos meals, except for during Kiddush, it is very much on the table, pun absolutely intended, to drink wine, and that matters. Because you can start making. Where is this? There's another comment here somewhere. Okay. So we're going to come to it in a second. My extra comments. Let's read one more thing in the Mishnah Berurah here, Lamed Vav, and then I'll explain my point about what's normal for people as being an important factor. Lamed Vav. That it's within the confines, in the framework of the meal. Birkas Borei Priagafen. You don't have to make another Borei Priagafen in the middle of the meal. Now, maybe there's such a custom. People drink wine at the very end of your meal. You want to end with a glass of wine.Maybe that's the thing people do before you make Birkas Hamazon. So you finish your meal, and now you want to have a little sip of wine. So that's also covered. It's all part of part of this meal. And there's no need to make another Borei Priagafen. Now, in my extra comments, this is number 29 actually, Tommy, so if you want to go backwards. So he writes, the extra comments, in the Biur Musafim here, they write, Aval im ein hayayin b'makom ha'seuda, v'tzarech lehavio b'mim komo. Let's say you make Kiddush. In order to bring more wine, it's not even available at the table. It's somewhere else, maybe it's somewhere else in the building, somewhere else, I don't know. So haya bedato shelo lishtos od ela oso akos velo yoser. So I had in mind I was only going to drink the 1 cup of wine that I had for Kiddush, and not more. The other bottle of wine, the bottles of wine are not so easily accessible. I'm only going to drink the 1 cup of wine. So in the Sharat Tziyun, I think that's the Sharat Tziyun. Earlier in Kuf Ayin Dalit, I guess, Sif Katan Chavzayin, though I would think Le'el is coming up. Sorry. Shenechshav kenimlach af im hayayin beveso. Kevan she'en derech anoshim lishtos me'at yayin. He says, but let's say it ends up that suddenly there is extra wine in the house. Somebody brought over a bottle, suddenly there is wine on the table in the middle of the meal. Since it's not the way of people to drink a little bit of wine during the meal, therefore, it does sound like you would need to make a new bracha. But it's not like bread, where you don't have to make a second bracha. I'm only having one slice of bread. I'm not going to have more slices of bread. But I changed my mind, right? Why? Because I'm only going to have one slice of challah today. I'm going to control myself. And what happens? Inevitably, suddenly I find myself 2-3 challah pieces in. So if there's bread on the table or not on the table, but it's not abnormal that more ends up on the table. I go and I take, then that's called, I had it in mind. I would argue that in our world, where we live, maybe there's other parts of the world where it's different, where there is an ample amount of wine, even if you're not such a wine drinker, that people might have a little bit of more wine in the middle of the meal, at a Shabbos meal, I think is very reasonable. So within the realm of normal, even if it doesn't happen most weeks. And therefore, I think that the rule of the Shulchan Aruch holds, as was read, that if you have wine in the middle of the meal, even if you don't typically have a second cup of wine during the middle of the meal. On other weeks, it is not abnormal in our world that you might have a little bit more wine. I just wanted to make that point.
You brought out the bottle of $200 wine. $200 bottle of wine for dinner.
Right.
I mean, you wouldn't normally
pull out that kind of bottle of wine. But you're sure you're like a tova meitiv.
But like I said, you have in mind to have you said because for a geffen. So if you have another wine, so it's not like you mentioned, about bread. You're not gonna wash your hands again because you already did. You ate. You had
correct.
To say because it was what I get. I mean,
right.
We'll see again.
Right. If we could truly, which I don't think even in the
same basis.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So the Borei Pregafen is interesting because it does go to show you that these comments go to show you that it's really the last few weeks I've sort of developed this thought, which is like, wow, I don't think that they drink as much wine as we give them credit for. Not in the time of the Gemara they did. At a certain point, I don't know, in these northern countries in Europe, I'm not sure how much wine they were consuming, aside from the raisin wine. And so maybe it really was truly not a normal thing to drink wine during the middle of the meal, and so they had their 1 cup. But by the way, even the way that I have my 1 cup of wine, yesterday I happened to use Moscato to make Kiddush during the day. Trying to use up all the mishloach manos. Got some canon in Moscato, whatever. And I didn't finish the whole thing. I had my Malo Lugmav to get Kiddush, and then I kept drinking a little bit as the meal went on. Also, I don't think that we have to finish all the wine then. And then sometimes, by the way, people are pouring back into the Kiddush or their own Kiddush cup, adding more later on. So I think that I don't know. I think that the way that we read Shulchan Aruch reads in our situation is the halacha. Now, let's go back onto the Shulchan Aruch now for a moment. Last sentence of the Shulchan Aruch here in Sif Yud says, "Ve'eno ton baracha la'acharav, debirchas lamazman potarto, bein shu alakos, bein she'ena alakos." And you don't need to make a bracha afterwards on the wine in particular of al gefen v'al priya gefen v'al tunuvas asadeh, etc. Because the birchas hamazon exempts you from, discharges you from having to make a separate bracha acharona. That's whether you make the birchas hamazon on a kos or whether you don't make it on a kos. You know whether you use the wine or not at birchas hamazon. The irony, of course, is if you do use a kos, you will need to make a bracha priya gefen, and then you'll have to make a bracha achas mein shalosh on the wine, but at least for the wine during, for kiddush during the meal and anything consumed before birkas hamazon, the birkas hamazon covers it.
You don't have to do it according to the birkas hamazon.
You don't, but if you use the kos to make the benching, then at the end of the benching you'll say bar priya gafen and you'll drink,
right? And
then it's assuming. Unless you drink less than a revius, if you drink more than a revius, you'll have to make another bracha acharona.
Say it right there.
Yeah, that's because of the other wine that you consumed. Yes. Okay, let's take a look at Lamed Zayin. So he says here, Lamed Zayin, the birchas hamazon potarto, that the benching will discharge you from your obligation. The kos shel kiddush hu gam kein bichlal dvarim haboy mechamas asuda, because the kos shel kiddush and the wine that's consumed during the meal are all part of the meal. Anything that's seen and viewed as part of the meal is certainly it's certainly covered under the birchas hamazon that's made at that meal. Okay. Just looking here if there's anything extra I wanted to add.
Says you don't have to say it. It says ben shu alakos, ben shu alakos. What does that mean?
When you do benching, you do the benching with a cup of wine. It was certainly, the Gemara almost assumes every time that you bench, you should use a cup of wine. If you have like a zimun, or maybe even not, maybe it's not a zoom, I'm not sure. But you would have a cup of wine in order to enhance the mitzvah of birkat hamazon. And then at the very end of birkat hamazon, I would say bar priya gefen, and I would drink it. I'm not sure, by the way, you have to drink a revius though, so you could probably just take a sip. But if you drink another revius, so that's what it means by bein shu alakos, bein shu ein alakos. Whether you do benching with the cup of wine or you don't use the cup of wine, the birchas hamazon helps.
So you don't have to say
with the wine from beforehand.
Okay, so you don't have to say much on the wine after, even if you have, shvi, revi.
On the wine afterwards?
Yeah.
So no, if you drink wine at the end of benching, if you have a revius of wine, you must make a bracha acharona, a new bracha acharona.
Before you say birkat hamazon.
No, after. That's what I mean by math. That's what I mean whether you make it over a cup or you don't make it over a cup means the benching, because you're going to hold that cup essentially throughout the benching, and at the end you'll make the bar priya gefen. If you do drink that, a revius of that, you would need to make now another bracha acharona on the wine. Al gefen v'al priya gefen. Now, so one thing I wanted to mention here that was in the extra comments I had, which my eyes bugged out a little bit when I was reading it. That was number 32. I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but they talk about here whether or not if you use grape juice, that maybe grape juice, you would need to make a separate bracha acharona on the grape juice. That wouldn't be covered by the benching. Now, I don't think this is the minhag olam. I've consumed plenty of grape juice as kiddush. I've never made a separate bracha acharona for the grape juice. But the svara, the thought behind this, I'll just read a little drop here. So I'm in the middle of like the bigger paragraph that starts with the eighth zo, but I'm in the middle of the paragraph. Actually, I'll go to the second line. Avalim kiddush al mitzvah navim. So Rav Elyashiv Paskins shalomo ila eitzah zo kevin shatam de b'shebirkas hamazon poteras yayin mevura b'shulchan aruch le'el mishum shu soedas halev. Why does the wine get covered under the benching? It's because it's soedas halev. It's what's a good word for soed?
It's a suda.
Yeah, no, and I like it. It's part. It gladdens the heart. That's the word, right? It gladdens the heart. Grape juice doesn't gladden the heart. Would you agree? When you drink grape juice, does it make your heart feel glad? Yeah, it makes you feel better, right? Okay, so we have the sugar, exactly. V'chein horeh Gaon Shlomo Vosner. Rav Shlomo Vosner also paskin this way, that grape juice would require a separate bracha acharona Shishtias mitzvah navim eina nifteret birchas hamazon. If you start mixing, okay, you start mixing the wine and the grape juice. So Rav Elyasher says, okay, shadino keyayin. Okay, but I'm not sure that that's what you accomplished something. I don't know. That makes it more complicated. Anyways, so if you have in mind at the time when you make kiddush, if you're going to drink grape juice during the course of the meal. So v'yishter mitzvah navim besud, and then you go ahead and you drink the mitzvah navim during the meal. As bechas hamazon poteres. Gam me'avis es mitzvah navim. Shishas lebekedesh kemevur b'shemishne b'ram. So you have to have it in mind that you can also drink during the meal. Okay, I'm not sure everyone drinks grape juice during the meal if they make kiddush on grape juice. It's at the beginning of the meal. Then he quotes Rav Pinchas Scheinberg, so who's not sure, he has a doubt about the whole question about grape juice. Grape juice doesn't cause you to, appetite for the meal like the way wine would. But on the other hand, and perhaps maybe all this time I was relying on Rav Nissim Karlitz, who Rav Nissim Karlitz says, no, shemitza navim dino kayayin l'chol davar, which actually makes a lot of sense to me. If you're going to treat it like wine, then treat it like wine.
Right.
And so Rav Nissim Karlitz says it's mitzvah navim is wine l'chol davar, and so therefore for these purposes too, we're not going to treat the halacha any differently. Now, back up on top, as you see in the parentheses there at the end, it says, V'ayin le'el simin kuf ayin dalid stiv Kuf ayin dalid stiv. Okay, so sometimes they get help, and sometimes you don't get help. So here the Mishnah Berurah gives us some help. He says, well, you don't have to turn back and look. And the Mishnah Berurah in Lameches says, Haynu disham mevor da'afilu lo haya lo yayin klal b'soch hamazon. Let's say you didn't have any wine at all during the meal. Gam kain poter habirchas hamazon lakosh shel kiddush. This, but the wine you have as a part for kiddush is covered by the birchas hamazon because it's part of the meal. And this is the halacha that was discussed earlier in Shulchan Aruch there in the context of the laws of meals, the hilchos of the seuda. That is covered. So, hopefully we have a much better understanding now of the topic of wine during Kiddush. Sorry, the wines that you use during Kiddush. What can't you use? All sorts of different things that are okay. Even though maybe on the Mizbeach you wouldn't use them for wine libations, nonetheless, for the purposes of Kiddush, we will be allowing them to be used. Next time, so there's just a couple things about the schedule. Next week, there is a Hilchot Shabbat delivery in Queens that I'm hoping to go with my family, which is very early on Sunday morning.
What are we doing?
I'll share it with you later. So delivering Pesach food for those who can't afford to buy Pesach food. Yes, we're going to go to Queens hopefully and deliver. And it is also the last Sunday before Pesach, and I acknowledge that that's also can be a very stressful day for a lot of people. I know that for me it'll also be getting ready for Pesach. It'll start the following Motzei Shabbos, so really you need to be ready.
Motzei is the night before Shabbos.
No, the night after Shabbos, the following week. But it's practically that means we need to be ready, obviously, Friday. So it's a busy time, and then the following 2 Sundays are Yom Tov. So the next 3 weeks we won't meet, and we'll pick up the Sunday that follows Pesach. So that's why I wanted to stop in a very comfortable spot here where we'll begin a new simon next time about the Kiddush b'Makom Seuda, which was really the last topic here in the topic of Kiddush, but it's actually it's a fun halachic topic in my opinion about making Kiddush in one spot, eating in another spot. Can you go from room to room? What we do here in the main shul and then eating here is a little bit of a shaila. And we'll defend the minhag, and I think this is actually, not that anyone needs my stamp of approval, but wherever this minhag started, it was actually whoever started that minhag was probably was thinking very well about the topic, because if you imagine people coming all in here and then, I don't know, people might not hear Kiddush at that point, because one person will try to make Kiddush and everyone's talking and they can't hear. But this does cause some problems. The whole movement between cheder mecheder lecheder. Question: can I go make Kiddush here? And then if I go continue my meal at home? These are interesting questions that we'll talk about and are not as impractical as we might think. I'll say that. We'll pick up with that next time in a few weeks. Between now and then, have a wonderful week and yeah, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that the